who says Congress can't get anything done? The House has passed a measure overturning President Biden's student loan forgiveness program, and that would give up to $20,000 in loan forgiveness to the poorest borrowers and $10,000 of forgiveness to others who qualify, the Hill reports. Virginia Representative Rob Goodman was successful in his effort to end the student payment pause and cancel the potential debt forgiveness for over 40 million Americans. Here's what Democratic Representative Frederica Wilson had to say about this.
I find it incredibly hypocritical and a double standard that my Republican colleagues welcome government bailouts for banks and other industries, but not for hardworking students.
And let's also listen to what KJP had to say on the debt relief issue yesterday prior to the vote.
Will Marjorie Taylor Greene, who had $183,000 of her own business loans forgiven, vote to deny debt relief to the 92,000 student borrowers she represents? Will Representative Vern Buchanan, who had over $2.3 million of business loans forgiven, vote to deny student debt relief for 95,000 of his own constituents? To the more than 40 million eligible student borrowers who are eagerly waiting to learn about the fate of their debt relief, I urge you to tune in today's vote to watch which Republican lawmakers shamelessly vote against debt relief for you after having their own loans forgiven.
GOP lawmakers are using the Congressional Review Act to repeal Biden's debt relief policies. The tool allows Congress to swiftly block recent executive branch policies using fast-track procedures. Of course, this proposal has very little chance, I would imagine, of passing in the Senate, although I guess in theory, Joe Manchin has been a little bit critical of student debt relief in the past. Anyway, the real question of whether student debt relief survives is really a Supreme Court question, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and don't count out congressional Democrats yet. Of course, there were 2 Democrats in the House that crossed the aisle to vote down relief for American students. There's no bottom to this particular vote. As a reminder, Joe Biden campaigned hard on student debt cancellation. It was one of the so-called concessions that Bernie Sanders managed to extract. He told specifically HBU students, people from historically black colleges and universities, they would have the full amount of their debt canceled. He made this pitch as he was really struggling to get Georgia voters to come out and win him the Senate. Some really major HBCUs are centered in Atlanta. That's an incredibly important push. Black students have more student debt and have it for longer than other students. It's a real reason why we often have negative net wealth in these kind of comparative wealth polls. And he betrayed that promise pretty blatantly. And in fact, he backtracked on the HBCU promise and basically stopped talking about it the second he got elected. Joe Biden's really struggling with both black voters and young voters who there's no threat that they're going to vote Republican, but there's a real threat that they might stay home. And it's not really clear to me how any Democrat can look a young or not so young voter in the face, because remember, student debtors are not even particularly young anymore. And the fastest growing constituency that has student debt are, in fact, seniors who often have their Social Security checks garnered to make these student loan payments. So how is he going to explain to them that they should vote for a Democrat when he's made these kind of pitches, lied about it, not followed through? I wouldn't want to be in Joe Biden's shoes.
I find it interesting that most of the Democratic response, or what we played at least, was very concentrated on the alleged hypocrisy of Republicans who have supported other bailouts, which I completely agree is hypocritical, which is why I think it's incumbent on conservatives who don't want to sound like hypocrites to oppose bank bailouts, airline industry bailouts, bailouts for COVID payments or business, all of that stuff, all of those policies which I was against in the first place, every single one of them. And some on the right opposed the bank bailout. If we're talking about the 2008 ones, although the mainstream establishment totally went along with it, which is a huge shame because it has undercut the ability to argue against things like this, which I'm very, very much against doing the student loan bailouts, but
we just
it does sound like a hypocrite.
Don't forget, we just bailed out Silicon Valley Bank and the other California bank.
Did I denounce that?
Yeah, for sure.
Great fervent.
That's what's so crazy. It's that we don't even have to go back so far to find instances of the American government feeling like it absolutely has to protect the interest of wealthy elites in this country. We have been propagandized about the benefits of trickle-down economics that plainly on its face, you have rich people who run Congress telling you we just cut taxes for the rich and make life better for the rich. That is going to have some magical hocus-pocus ability to make lives of poor people better. We've been talking about that since at least the Reagan era. I'm not really sure that anyone really puts much stock in the idea that if Jeff Bezos pays a lower tax rate than his secretary, that's going to inure to his secretary's benefit. But here we are. And the reality is that politicians are able to, on both sides of the aisle, are able to promote these kind of policies with impunity, dangle policy relief, student debt relief, and other kinds of policy relief that they have no intention of actually passing. Remember that Joe Biden could have immediately on day one signed an executive order canceling student debt. It would have gone into effect, and it would have been very difficult for people to use the courts to stop it once it is unwound, once people's debt balances are canceled. Remember, this is federal debt that is held. That's why they're able to cancel it without having to pay tax money or anything like that.
Well, now the court can cancel it, and then he'll complain about it, and he'll be able to run and say, see, this is why I need 4 more years to put more Democrats on the Supreme Court
of course. But the point that I'm making is that I just want to be really clear to the audience that Joe Biden cannot blame the courts for this, and he can't even really blame Congress for this. If he had done it by executive order on day one, the courts would not have had time to enjoin the process. Because he set up the process where it was going to be means tested and we had to fill out these forms, and he waited a year and a half into his presidency, 2 years into his presidency to even do it. That is what enabled the obstruction to even take place in the first place. And the student debt advocates have been warning about them since long before he actually took office. This is squarely on Joe Biden's shoulders. So if he does do what you're saying and try to say, well, elect me again and we'll try it again next time, I don't think that he can credibly make that argument. And if you believe that, I have a bridge to sell you. You
think it will actually hurt him among young voters and black voters and the people you're talking about who have student loan debt? I'm nobody's organizer, but it does seem to me that there is a real allergy to leverage among left-leaning organizers and activists. There is a feeling that whoever it is, Trump or DeSantis, poses such a threat, fascism rising, all of these kinds of things that people say, that they will vote blue no matter who, no matter what. So it does strike me as also incumbent on those advocacy organizations to have a real soul search about what their bottom line is going to be and how much they're willing to have taken from them. Because at the end of the day, there's always going to be another Donald Trump. There's always going to be another Republican who's perceived to be worse than the next and pose a threat to the country like no other. And what does that mean? At what point are you ever going to stand up and fight for something affirmatively and demand that the Democratic Party do something other than be marginally better than Republicans? How does that benefit working class people of all stripes who are just getting played off of each other in these ways? I mean, you're probably right about the politics of it, that it would have been better politics for Biden, or it shores up his base, or it energizes his supporters to more robustly cancel this. So then you have to start thinking, well, what was his thinking in not doing that? That it alienates too many. Well, he takes a lot of money from Wall Street banks. And Wall Street banks. So, I mean, they want to get all the bailouts themselves. No, I mean, when I'm sorry to keep doing this, but when Bernie and his supporters were talking about the influence of money in politics and stressing that he was the only candidate who took the no corporate money pledge. When I have conversations on my show with Andrew Yang about how the Forward Party isn't going to go anywhere, up, down, forward, leftward, or backward, if they continue to take money from corporate interests and style themselves like the two corrupt parties we already have, it's because of exactly this. It is completely predictable that candidates that take money from the pharmaceutical industry, like Biden did, from the banking industry, like Biden did, from the military-industrial complex, like Biden did, are going to turn around and post Raytheon executives and CDC and big pharma executives as their senior advisors, Steve Ricchetti, Lloyd Austin, all of these figures, and that they are going to continue to build America in their image, in their company's images. And instead of looking at the polls to see what most Americans want, which is free health care, common sense gun reform, a living wage, build more houses, fix the infrastructure, withdraw from our wars. And college students to not have to pay their debts. Yeah.
They want free public education, which Bernie was offering.
They want other people to pay for education.
Yeah, just like they pay for elementary, middle school, and elementary school. It's one of the things that America used to be most proud of, that we provided a public education and we wanted an educated populace that can compete on the global stage. Now, apparently...
More and more money and nothing to show for it. I think that's the frustration that a lot of people have. A lot of frustrations with the school system, not just on the far right, but everywhere where Republicans are making gains among moderate suburbanites, people who don't like what's going on in their schools, who know the school system was not there for them in COVID, who don't like the politics of some school districts, are not at all happy with the education system in this country.
I'm proud of American institutions. We had one of the fastest growing literacy rates earlier in our tenure. It's part of why we're able to compete with the world. We're slipping dramatically. And we are talking about escalating conflicts with China. We're talking about de-dollarization. And it has become culturally popular among a minority of Americans, but a growing minority of Americans, to attack the institutions that quite literally made America great. So if you're not a believer in public education, if you think that America kind of just like willed itself as a manufacturing giant and a technological giant and a leader on the world stage without it being rooted in the capacity of our people and how hard they worked and how smart that they were, well, time will tell, because things are going downhill and we're going to see what happens. China making waves for building, was it a hospital? They built some building in like 9 hours. Everyone was impressed by it. A bunch of other people were coping online saying, oh, we can't do that here because of all of these X, Y, and Z reasons. We
can't build anything here because
either you respect your
zoning
people,
laws and a lack of immigrants.
That's the kind of things that people are saying. You either respect your populace, you want to make their lives better. Politicians' job should be making lives better for Americans.
I don't think encouraging all people to go to college for more and more years.
I don't think that you should do that either. So who's that an argument for?
Well, that's what we're incentivizing by forgiving the choices of the people who did that. We're going to have more debt. We're going to have more people. We're going to have people. We're delaying the age of adulthood.
Free public college.
When you subsidize something, you get more of it.
I'm sorry. The argument is that you have free public college.
No, we're talking about the debt relief.
No.
I think I support making college more affordable for people. It should be the way it was. It should be the way it was when our parents were going to, you
before
could
Ronald
pay for
Reagan
college,
privatized the California system and it withdrew funding from the California system because this is stated reporting news. He didn't like the culture of those schools, so he used the authority of the federal government.
Universities get plenty of funding and still raise tuition rates. I would stop them from doing that.
Okay, Robby. For those people who really value their ability because they're poor and can't afford private schools, or they really value public education and they value the culture of public education, they value their own public education, and think that in a world increasingly that requires skills, rightly or wrongly, that require either post-high school training, vocational school, or college, I think the argument is, why should people who are affluent be able to give those kids their opportunities and people who are not affluent don't? Shouldn't it be a merit-based system?
No, the argument is...
And how do you make it a merit-based system if what thing is precluding most people from going to college, who want to go to college, or to vocational school, is the cost? That doesn't mean everyone should go or should have to go. But the decision should be made on the basis of your desire, not I just can't afford to go. And that's the situation we're in today in America.
In reality, you have to operate within your means, and lots of people make smarter choices for themselves, did not go massively into debt, and got good educational options out of it, and got jobs based on it. It is doable, and we can talk about tweaks to the system to rebalance things more in that direction. But I am not for just magically canceling the debts of people who freely took them on to have a college experience and did not invest in their future in a smart way.
I'm aware. You and Biden both. I won't be voting for either of you. We'll have more Rising right after this.